not speak to them without a lawyer present, because then these people are there for hours and they sign off on their rights, and then they could say something that could be used later against them in court because they don't understand the law. Wouldn't it be better if they just automatically had a lawyer present?
Well, I obviously think that that would be better for the defendant, but we can't compel people that don't want lawyers to have lawyers. I think we'd have to create some huge government infrastructure to have lawyers always available for people who don't have one or wanted one. But to personalize your question, if I was in that boat, knowing what I know, I would definitely have an attorney there. And maybe Mike Lewis might want to comment on that also about having an attorney, mandatory attorney.
I'd be curious, actually, Alan, at what point did you actually get an attorney involved?
Well, actually, I called my attorney when I went down to the precinct, but I wasn't able to get through to him. But as the way things turned out, I needed my attorney there for that lineup, because the things that went on in my lineup, if I had somebody there to represent me, it probably wouldn't have went on now. But I know a lot of cases where, like the chief said, you have some people that just don't want attorneys. They just want to confess sometime and, get stuff off their chest. So it would be impractical to have an attorney all the time. Because like I said, a lot of times some people just want to unburden themselves and just get things up off their chest out. But a lot of other cases where people are coerced into confessing, even though they didn't commit a crime, in cases like that, they do cry out to have somebody there represent them.
It's important. I thank Alan for that comment, because we really can't force attorneys on people, force people. If they want to talk to police, they have the ability to talk to the police. If it's an interrogation that's custodial, meaning they're under arrest, or a reasonable person, innocent of any crime, would have felt themselves not free to leave, that's sort of the New York standard for custody, then they're required to be read their rights. And that's something that's, of course, black letter law throughout the country. The importance, and this is, once again, ties in with the beneficial nature of videotaping, because you get to hear the way the Miranda warning is administered. You don't just hear a police officer on the stand afterwards reading a card and saying, yeah, I read it to the suspect in this manner. You actually get to hear the way it's read. You get to hear the number of times the officer turned and made eye contact, and said, do you understand what that means? You have a right to attorney. Do you understand what that means? And you, as a juror, get to decide all over again whether or not that confession, that waiver of his right to remain silent, waiver of his right to an attorney, was knowing, voluntary, and intelligent. The court makes a preliminary finding. If it passes muster with the court at a preliminary hearing, the jury gets to determine that all over again. And by videotaping that interview session, you can see how the person was advised of their rights, how voluntary was how knowledgeable was their waiver of their rights, how voluntary was their waiver of their rights. So it does tie in with videotaping, although making attorneys mandatory, I don't think would solve some of the problems that exist today. The Miranda warning is an important guarantee and protection. I think videotaping enhances that protection.
We have a question here. Any question?
My question is, it says 200 exonerated. Were any of these people that were innocent, were they compensated? And my suggestion is, when they get out, is it possible to give them a letter or something so these poor souls can get a job?
I'm going to elaborate on that just a little bit myself and say that compensation can take any number of forms in terms of either monetary compensation or support benefits, and I wonder if everyone would mind addressing that as well.
I'll comment, and I think all of you saw the movie. If you watch, there is more given to someone who comes out of prison on parole than when they're exonerated. Because on parole, you're given support services, you're helped with, job and training and employment. When, I don't know, Ellen can probably speak to what he was provided with, but the fact is, right now in our state, there is no provision for compensation.
Well,